we are going.
Just get my anchor man ready. We go on tech.
Are we ready?
Okay, so this is my concept. It's called exposure, and it is, if we go on to the concept, it's a really flexible platform for injecting things into people's photography, and it's really easy to use. No user experience. It's, the user doesn't even have to know that they're participating. It's that simple. It's totally automatic. The only equipment they need is any camera with a flash. Any consumer grade point and shoot is absolutely fine. They take a photo of a piece of public art or anything, and everything appears completely normal. The flash goes off, the photo goes, into their camera, the photo's taken. They're none the wiser, hopefully. And then we can go down, and what's actually happened is when they go back and check over their photo, they see that stuff has actually been injected into the photos that wasn't actually part of the piece. So, great, that's a neat party trick, but what are we actually going to do with it? If we go over here, we've actually sort of cooked up a bunch of scenarios where we can use this thing and have it sort of be fun, useful, and sort of attract people to these things we have around Newcastle. So the first one is sort of interventionist art. And we can go around and we can sort of muck about with the stuff that's already there and sort of play with it a bit. So this one is Full Circle, the piece that was commissioned by Nexus. I just thought it'd be a good opportunity to lampoon it a bit, and I stuck sort of eyes in her face to make it look a bit grumpy. The nice thing about this kind of platform is that it's not in your face. You don't have to partake in it if you don't want to. If you don't like that sort of concept, it's not your thing, you like the original piece of artwork, totally voluntary. If you don't like it, you don't have to partake. You don't have to take a photo. You have to actively sort of go out and look for it in order to sort of be affected by it at all. So it's unobtrusive, and the next thing is it's not destructive. It's not graffiti. You're not scrawling all over people's artwork. It doesn't cause any destruction. No monetary costs. So it keeps it all above board, completely legal and happy. So if we go on. The next sort of concept I've got is for an interactive system, and that's using the projection in line with Twitter, and we sort of created a participatory commenting system, so you can add comments onto a piece of public art. This is the circuit board piece that's just outside the central station, and what we'd have is a permanent sort of sign there that's always visible, just a real world sign, a non-projected sign, and that would sort of instruct the user to take a flash photo if they want to learn more. And when they do take a flash photo, what actually turns up is this, a sort of comment stream that's been aggregated from Twitter, and it's associated with a hashtag so that anyone can sort of participate in this conversation, and they can do so by using the instructions that are commented in there. So they just have to tweet at a hashtag or something like that. And with this concept and the concept before, we've got a really reduced onus for censorship, which is cool because it means we can sort of wipe our brow and let our hair down a bit, and it means we don't, because it's not in your face, it's not overt, it's not going to be sort of in the little kiddie's face. We don't need to be quite so strict and quite so worried about who's going to inadvertently see it and be affected by it. So that's a good thing. It means we can sort of run closer to the line a bit with our concepts and our content. And also with things like Twitter and those kind of things, it means that we're not going to get sort of slaughtered for someone else's bad language. Next concept is, well, it's two concepts coming under one category, which is using infographics on stuff. So the first one is architecture. This is the Tyne Bridge, and this was just a little concept I cooked up because not many people realise that the pylons on the Tyne Bridge, they're actually a steel structure, and the stone as facade. So I thought it'd be cool to reveal what's actually inside and use that as a concept for this. And it means what we have is, I've just put this on the real blueprints, but being that we've got cooperation from the council, we'll be able to acquire the real blueprints and superimpose them over and reveal the inner structure to the people that are taking photos of the bridge. The next concept I've got is we can add commentary and information. There's lots of public art out there that has a lot of sort of hidden meaning, subtext and so on and so forth, but a lot of people miss out on that and they don't sort of enjoy and get the whole experience. So the idea with this one, which is the mural just off of Northumberland Street, which has got loads of meaning in it. It's about the history of Newcastle, but I was looking at it and for example, I didn't know what the turbinia was. It was a boat with turbinia on it. Big work. Until I went and I was doing this concept and I looked at it. I mean, it was actually the first turbine steamship ever made. It was the fastest boat in the world by leaps and miles. And all of these cool things, we can sort of add commentary, descriptions, annotations, and sort of really get people more interested in what's going on in these things and give them a really good idea so they can really get sort of 100% out of what's there already. So we've got stuff like the first light bulb that was invented here, we've got the 3 bridges, we've got the old Roman name for Newcastle, and we could go on and we'll go on and do the whole thing. And there's lots of opportunities for doing stuff like this. I think that's another cool concept. So how does it work? It's not actually a pipe dream. I've done it, we've made it, it works. So we start off with a camera, and with the camera you take a photo, and the photo causes a flash, and from the flash we end up taking a reading with a sensor, and that sensor is connected to a microcontroller, and we use a different algorithm to look for pulses of light as opposed to using, say, thresholds that would be affected by changes in daylight and things like that. So we're looking for sudden changes, and that provides us with quite a robust system that works in quite bright conditions. Tested it in daylight with a 1400 lumen light bulb on it as well, and it still works really well, so I'm really pleased with how that's turned out. So that's the sensing sort of circuitry, and then we move on to projection, pardon me. So once a flash is detected, in sort of one concept, you'd fire directly a projector from the microcontroller by sending a signal to a flash, which is behind something like a slide projector, where the flash replaces the light bulb. That would just be for static content, and that would be really simple, really cheap, and really fast and effective to implement. The next kind of concept is that you feed the arrival of a flash signal into a computer, and then the computer can be connected to the internet and it can create dynamic content on the fly to do all sorts of cool things. So that's how you do your Twitter streams, it's how you do things with content that changes, content that moves. All your interactive stuff will go through a computerized system, and then that will go out to a projector, a digital projector in this case. So depending on what kind of situation you have to buy different kinds of projectors, but there are lots of projectors out there, even for the most demanding tasks. So, and then the projector projects back onto the piece, and from the piece the light reflects back into the camera, and that's how we get the image back into the camera. So that's the entire concept sort of wrapped up for you. Lastly, just some analysis. This is sort of the meat of it. So, first thing is costs, something we always have to consider. But before we go into costs, I really want to point out that the cost on these is really variable, depending on the situation, the size of what you want to project, whether you want it to be interactive or static. But the nice thing is that it really does scale in a big way, from the low end to the high end. Anything in between can be accommodated. So if you wanted 3 projectors, 3 systems at £3 grand each, you had a £10,000 budget as proposed. You could scale and you could make those systems and you could get really good value and end up getting, you know, a good system for whatever price point you have. So the next thing is the lowest end system, static projection, probably not terribly bright, but good for, say, things like archways, alleys, sort of darker areas where you just want to highlight things, point something out, or put a simple sort of static projection. Sort of a tot-up of all the prices, electronics, mounting, housing, labour, all the rest of it, and that comes out to £550 or thereabouts. And we can go all the way up to that from there and scale up to sort of the highest end system, which is sort of, you know, blow the budget and spend it all on one sort of thing. But this really does provide, you know, something really cool. You could project onto an enormous statue. For example, the Angel of the North. We could go to the Angel of the North and project onto it using two really high power, high resolution projectors, using two from both sides, so we get sort of a 3D covering of the entire statue. So you can take photos from different angles and not necessarily be in line with the projectors, but still get really good coverage and augmentation of what's going on here. Using an array of sensors to get lots of really reliable data, lots of sensitivity, and that includes hiring a programmer to do dynamic content, using a computer to generate that dynamic content, and getting that installed. There's an installation budget for example, you know, if you're installing something in a public space, it's going to need to be installed. You know, if it's on a public highway, it's going to have to be theft-proof. It's going to need to be strong, weatherproof. It's going to have to be safe overall, you know, so it doesn't fall off and drop on someone's head. So all of this is budgeted in, and that comes down to £9,500 for the absolute top-end system, where you couldn't want anything more. But yeah, it really does scale, and it goes to every kind of size and budget that you might ever need. And lastly, once you've sort of bought a system, if you bought a dynamic system or a passive system, they're really adaptable, so you can change the purpose. So for the static sort of content systems, you can just change out the slide, put it in a new position, change it to something else, and that's going to cost you very little money. And for the dynamic content systems, all you need is a programmer that knows processing, which is the language that's most used in the sort of digital media and new media communities, and they're not hard to find, they're fairly cheap as well. And it's an open system, easy to learn, and anyone can sort of just go in there, and it's not a hard system to learn to reprogram and create new content for these dynamic systems. And also lastly, just as a small point, so we'll just skip over that and that we covered. Point, we can also use the projectors as an always-on system as well, so we don't have to just use them as flash. We can, if you have another application, you can always repurpose these systems. So that's pretty much everything really. We've got the base concept, and we've got a bunch of really cool, interesting scenarios that, and they're not just finite. You know, they're sort of inspiration. You go on and you can take those and do what you like with them. We've got proven technology that's been prototyped, it's functional, we know it works really well. We've got budgets within, you know, that scale to all kinds of budgets, and it's really adaptable, really versatile, and it's ready to go. So that's my presentation. It's called Exposure, and I hope you like it.